Our third topic is on the concept of states. You, yes, Ebenezer.
Sorry for the interruptions. It said the assignment you gave us. Um, this was my understanding. I saw it like 2 questions, and the two questions were supposed
So
to be
please,
in my
let's
mind.
finish with the class, eh? Then we talk about
All right, sure. Thank
other
you.
things, okay? Yeah. So today we're going to talk about states, concept of states. And this is a topic I've been told that you, you've gone through the topic in level 100, states. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
No,
Fantastic.
sir.
So to make the work easier, but here we examine state in a comparative manner. So you're going to deploy the knowledge you acquired in level 100 so that we will do more comparison, okay, and to also do a more synthesis of the concept of state. We are going to take it from a different angle altogether in a comparative manner. If I ask you today, how many states do we have in the international system? What will be your answer? How many states do we have in the international system?
195.
Sorry?
195.
193.
195.
195.
195.
Okay. Any other view? Any other view?
183.
183. Any other? So, my dear friends,
199.
199. Hey, you see, so, all right. By the time we are through with this topic, we will all be given a more authoritative answer. And my dear friends, as comparativists, a question like this does not require a simple answer or a straightforward answer. No particular figure is right or wrong. You have to explain. You have to explain. So that is the notion of states, which we're going to discuss today and next week. So I want someone to look at the images we have here and describe what you see. What do you see? Describe any of the images you see.
Different countries.
Different countries? Good. Okay. So
Flags of countries.
Flags of the countries, okay, depicting what the different states. So that tells us that today we're going to learn what states. The flags represent, these are symbols of states, statehood. So in the course of this lecture, we're going to conceptualize the state. What is a state and what are the features? Okay. We will try to distinguish between state and government. Then, how did the state emerge? How did the state emerge? How did the modern state also come about? We will look at the Peace of Westphalia, which will signify the birth of the modern states, sometimes called the Westphalian state system. The Westphalian state system. So you go through the Peace of Westphalia, era of warfare and then welfare, and then we do more comparative assessment. Where we look at diversity of states. The reason I told you that in this course, we're going to learn states from a different angle. So we will build on the knowledge you acquired in the first year. More importantly, we will be looking at diversity of states, which means we'll be comparing states to see how they differ from one another in terms of their population, in terms of political authority, and then in terms of income. Based on these indicators, we can classify states. All right. Now, I want someone to share their opinion on what a state is. What is a state, my dear friends? Hello?
Hi.
Yes, what comes to mind?
So I would say that a state is a political unit that has a government or that has a territory, government with its people able to manage their own affairs. Thank you.
Okay, good. Any other view?
So I also think a state is a geographical area with a population, a government, yes, that exercise authority over the people. Thank you.
Okay, great.
They manage their own affairs. They have a ruling government and they manage their own affairs within a particular geographical area.
All right, thank you. Thank you, all of you. So in defining the state, you use the defining features, okay, to conceptualize what a state is. We will look at two authoritative definitions, but by way of introduction, my dear friends, the standard unit of analysis in comparative politics is the state. So in all the things we are doing as comparative politics, our standard unit of analysis is the state. That is why in our first lecture, the slide, the cover page, you saw the flags of different states to suggest that when we talk of comparative politics, our traditional focus or our standard unit has been what? States. Comparing with different countries, their systems of governance, their political system, and what have you, okay? But you are also aware that the state is not the only thing that we compare. Is that true? Do we compare other things other than the state? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What are some of the things apart from the state?
So we compare the individual and collective actors.
Fantastic. Good. Any other? Any other
So we compare institutions.
institutions? Good. So
And
the
The processes.
processes. Good. Good. So your colleagues in our main campus, they are, in fact, they are writing their mid-semester exams. Okay. And this question is something they are working on as we speak. The system is open for them for the next few, hours, and they are working. So these are some of the things you need to take note. So the state is the standard unit or the traditional focus, but that does not mean that it is the only thing that we focus our attention on. And because the state is our standard unit or our traditional focus, dear comparativists, we need to spend much time to digest what a state is, how the state came into being, in other words, how the state emerged. How the state emerged and how the state has evolved. Then the varieties in which states got occur. Because all states are not same. There are some variations. And states can differ in terms of population. Some are too populous, very overpopulated, and others are also very tiny. Very tiny in terms of geographical area, very tiny in terms of population. There are some states whose population is less than 4214 students, yet it is a state worth its salt or recognized by the international community. And as students of comparative politics, we should understand these dimensions. Even there are some states which exist but are not recognized by the international community, yet they exist as states. That is why when I pose the question, how many states do we have? In fact, it is a question those on main campus are answering as we speak now. How many states do we have in the international system? Well, note it very well. There is no straightforward answer, my dear friends. You have to describe and discuss. And by the time we are through with this lecture, lecture 3, you should be very comfortable in answering such a question. How many states do we have in the international system? You should be able to answer. Now, the states, according to Haig, Harrop, and McCormick, in short, Haig et al., and that is the main textbook we are using for the Poly 214 class. So Haig et al. And then Karamani. These are the two important texts we are using for the course. Now, Haig et al. Argue that state connotes or state involves the political authority. Once we talk about state, we are referring to the political authority, of which government is the managing authority. And the authority is regarded as both sovereign and legitimate by the citizens of the state and the governments of other states. So this definition is coming from political scientists. And so you see that it is very loaded. The element of sovereignty, legitimacy are embedded. But the state is the political authority. So if you have a territory or geographical area where political authority is located, it is regarded, it is given the recognition as a political entity, political community, where it is given somewhat recognition. It has a government, and the government is the one that carries out the aspiration and wishes of the states. The government is the managing authority, all the things the state wishes to do. These are done through the government. As for the state, it is just for the political authority. It's a symbol of political authority, but abstract in nature. Let me give a practical example. When you have a company, let's say a bank, like ABSA. Now, the bank ABSA is a legal entity, so recognized because it is an incorporated entity under the Companies Act. So it is regarded as a bank. It has that legal recognition. It is a legal personality. The bank can sue you, and you can also sue the bank. It is a legal entity, legal personality. But the bank is abstract. It has managers, it has directors, it has officers who carries the wishes, the desires, and everything that the company wishes to do. The company can hire people, but this is done through its managers and directors. So same way, the state is the political authority, but its government is the managing entity or authority, and that political authority is regarded as both sovereign within the territory that the state finds itself. It is the most powerful entity. It can do anything within its geographic area, can pass law on any subject. This is Hague et al. Now, according to Max Weber, Weber defines it as a human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. That is a state. Now, features of a state, my dear friends. Features of a state. Today, your chief comparativist, I'm going to put on two different hats. The hats as a scholar of public international law and as a scholar of comparative politics. So I'm going to wear two hats so that you understand the thing very well. If it is taken from just political science perspective, something will be lacking. And if it is taken from just law perspective, something will be lacking. But being fortunate to be tutored by a scholar of public international law and comparative politics, me putting on the two hats today, okay, will clarify, the complex issues for you to really appreciate, and also the nexus between international law and then political science this afternoon or evening. Now, the Montevideo Convention, and by the way, when we talk of international law, the sources of international law are usually, through what we call treaties. Okay, treaty is one of the basic sources of international law. So at the local level or at national level, in law we call it at the municipal level. At the municipal level, or you will call it at national level, there are sources of law. What are the sources of law in Ghana? The main source of law in Ghana is what?
The Constitution.
The Constitution. Good. Yes, the Constitution. And what else? Constitution. Or conventions. And acts of parliament, right? Very important. Right? Parliament makes acts.
Yes.
And once they are assented by the president, they become law, like the special office of special prosecutor. The special prosecutors acts. So once the act was established, the bill was passed and assented, then the law became what? Implemented. So we established the office of special prosecutor and everything, and that is how. But in the international scene, one of the key sources of law is what we call treaty. Treaty involves agreements, okay, legally binding agreements by states. So parties to the agreement, agree, and then it is passed, which will guide or bind members party to the treaty. Treaty can be called several names. It can be called a protocol, okay? So we have what AU protocols, which bind AU members. Protocol, charter, like Charter on Human Rights, convention, treaty, and what have you, okay? Now, it's also called convention. Convention, charter, treaty, protocol, and what have you. One of such conventions is the Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. This is a treaty which was signed in 1933 in a town called Montevideo. So we call it the Montevideo Convention. This is widely regarded as setting out the classic criteria for statehood in international law. So for an entity to be called a state, you have to meet this minimal criteria. This one, the threshold is not much. Once you meet it, well, you are a state. But that one, the statehood that you have is formed by the declarative theory of statehood. Note it very well. According to the Montevideo Convention, the criteria as established in Article 1, a state possesses these features: permanent population. So a state has a population. State has a territory. This one is easier to have this. State has a government, which is an effective political authority that exercises control. And the state has capacity to enter into relations with other states. Okay, so these are the 4 basic criteria according to the Montevideo Convention. Where can we find Montevideo, my dear friends?
Germany. South America.
No, it's not in Germany.
Argentina.
Uruguay.
Yes,
Oh,
Uruguay. Right? Uruguay. So the Montevideo Convention took place in Uruguay. All right. So that is Montevideo. Can you see the screen? Can you see my screen? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see. Yes, sir.
So the Montevideo Convention gives 4 criteria: territory, population, government, and then ability to enter into relations with others. That is the Montevideo Convention. All right. Now, so once you meet that, minimum criteria, these 4 criteria, well, you are a state. Article 3 of the Montevideo Convention states that a state's the existence of a state is independent of recognition by other states. If you meet the 4 basic criteria, you are a state. It doesn't matter whether others regard you or not, you are a state. And this is known as the declarative theory of statehood. Hello, my dear friends, are you there? This is known as the declarative theory of statehood. Once you meet the basic criteria by the Montevideo Convention, you are a state by the declarative theory of statehood. Now, note that the Montevideo Convention provides the legal criteria for statehood, but in practice, recognition and participation in the international community are also shaped by politics. So to be called a state in the international system is political in nature. It is shaped by politics. It is shaped by politics. Are you with me? Hello.
Hi.
So you can have the 4 minimal criteria, but for you to be recognized by the UN, okay, and the international community, it is political in nature. It is political nature. All right. So there are 2 theories of statehood, my dear friends. The declarative theory, which is one of the convention's most influential provision in Article 3, which states that the political existence of the state is independent of recognition by the other states. This reflects the declarative theory of statehood. If an entity meets the objective criteria above, okay, the 4 criteria, it is a state, regardless of whether other countries formally recognize it. Okay, that is the declarative theory of statehood. Do you agree? It is simply saying that, well, for example, when a man and then a woman meet and then they agree that they want to be a family, okay? And then, they settle, they understand themselves. Well, they stay together under one roof. They do all they do that, married people do. And they declare themselves as what? married people. Once they meet that, minimal criteria, stay under one roof, understand themselves, do all the things that, couples do. Well, they are also what? They are couple, they are living, it's a family. They can give birth because they are doing all the things people do. So then it is a family worth their salt. That's the declarative theory of statehood. But my dear friends, that is the Montevideo Convention I've talked about. I've also mentioned that to be accepted as a state, it is political in nature. Okay, it is political in nature. So this one is just like saying that the fact that you, the lady and then the man, you've understood yourselves, you consent, and that you are living under one roof, if you're making babies, does not mean that you are a family or you are married. There should be some conferment. There should be some kind of a conferment, either by the family, to agree. Sometimes we can go and hey, this one we will not agree. Say, well, even if you will not agree, we are there. And then you are still staying. Then the question is, are they what? Are they couples or they are not? Because the family refused to recognize them or take a bride price or something. Now, the constitutive theory says that an entity becomes a state only when it is recognized by existing states. You have to be ushered into the community of states by existing states. Recognition is therefore constitutive. Recognition is what creates statehood, not merely declaratory. That you miss the 4 criteria doesn't mean you are a state. Now, the strength of this constitutive theory is that it reflects diplomatic reality. Yes, in practice, if you are not recognized by the international system or community, it will be difficult for you to interrelate with other states. And this explains why recognition matters in practice. If other states don't recognize you, then what are you in for? But a major weakness is that it makes statehood dependent on political decisions. You can be very efficient or effective government. You can meet all the criteria, go through all the processes, but then if the international community or some few veto states, states with veto power, superpowers, don't recognize your statehood, then you are in limbo. Okay, you are in limbo. That's why we are saying it makes statehood dependent on political decisions. It allows powerful states to influence who becomes a state. Example, Taiwan functions as a state, but it lacks widespread diplomatic recognition, which illustrates the tension between constitutive and declarative theories. So, my dear friend, you know how we are building the point. You see that when I ask you, therefore, how many states do we have in the world? That question cannot evoke a simple answer. Ebenezer, are you with me? Ebenezer, are you there? Dion.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Maxwell.
Yes. Yes, Doc. Please, I'm here.
Fantastic. So you will see that it is not easy to simply put or quote a figure, because then you have to even ask by state. Professor, are you referring to states by the declarative theory or states by the constitutive theory? if you give a straightforward answer, it means you are not a comparativist. You don't understand the diversity of states. You are not aware that states exist in some diverse forms, and so you cannot simply say A or B. You have to describe. All right. And there are several states that are in the same category as that of Taiwan. They exist. They meet all the 4 criteria as set out by the Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States, which also states that the existence of states is independent of recognition by others. And so they are there. Well, they call themselves states. But then they are not recognized by the international community because that is political in nature. So then they are not. But the question is, do you add them to your number of states? Do you add them or do you take them out? And that is something you have to tell me when I ask you the question. Are you with me? Good. So okay, well, I believe you have subscribed to the group page already, right? You have subscribed to our group channel. I hope you are there already.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes,
so that's the channel, Comparative Politics for Society. Now, all states have 4 defining qualities: population, legitimacy, territory, and sovereignty. Of course, this one, then I am putting on the political science hat. If you put on your political science hat, yeah, I'll argue that states have 4 defining qualities: population, legitimacy, territory, and sovereignty. Sovereignty, very important. Now, let's note that the modern states, the state as you find it today, the state as you see it today, which is so powerful than every other entity within the territory of a state. Today, when you see a state like Ghana or like UK, you go there today and then the government is more powerful, or if you like, the state is the most powerful entity, more powerful than every other social organization in the territory. Before then, that was not so. Before then, that was not the arrangement. But the modern state was born in Europe. The modern state was born in Europe, and its form was exported to the rest of the world by imperial powers such as Britain, France, and Spain. These were the colonial masters. So the modern state and its structure was born in Europe, and through colonialism, they exported it to the other parts of the world, such as Ghana, Nigeria, India, okay, India, and then the rest of the world, Pakistan and the likes. Honduras, Guatemala, Cuba, and the likes. The modern state was born in Europe, and its its form was exported to the rest of the world by these, colonial powers. Now, let's also note that formally or officially, states are equal, but in practice, states vary dramatically in several forms, such as their size. The size of their population and territory, states vary. In terms of their economic importance or national income, states vary. Some are very rich, and so they have a bigger say in the international community. They have greater influence, and you are aware that it is not just the international system, that if you have deep pockets, you have a greater say. Even in our local level, if you have deep pockets, you know the things you can do. And if you don't have deep pockets, you also know your weaknesses. They say that Unisika wasemsa. Do you agree?
I am Papa.
Okay, so if you don't have money, well, sometimes even if you have a strong case, you just abandon it because no one will want to listen to you. And you have to do the farmer nyame type. Okay. So in terms of their economic importance, also in terms of their international significance, states vary. Some are strong in terms of their military presence. And for that matter, in the international system, they are very significant. Some have veto powers, okay, and they are permanent members of the Security Council of the UN. And others are more or less like Sanquas. Well, some also are able to control their territory. We mentioned that states have defined territory. And as comparativists, we will be comparing. You get to know that some states are able to totally control and defend their territory. That is sovereignty. Others also are helpless. They are very weak. They are fragile. They are unable to control their entire territory. So, my dear friends, these are the things we're going to look at as scholars of comparative politics. Well, states differ from what? Governments. States differ from governments, and this is so elaborate in the definition by Haig, Harrop, and McCormick, 2016. That's Haig et al. Their definition, if you will recall, they argue that the state defines the political authority. The state involves the political authority of which government is the managing authority. In essence, the state defines the political community. And then the government is the manager or the managing authority. That is why in parliamentary systems, you see an entity or an individual who is the embodiment of the state, and another individual who is the embodiment of the government. When you go to UK today, who is the head of state?
President Donald Trump.
I said UK.
King Charles. King Charles.
King Charles. Okay. King Charles. Or if you want to be safe, you don't want to mention him, what do you say?
The monarch.
Yes, the monarch, right? The monarch.
Or the crown.
The crown. Okay. Or can say, the king. King Charles. So that is the head of state, who is the embodiment of the state. We also have an entity that is the head of government. And who is that?
The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister, okay. The Prime Minister signifies the government. Now, when you come to Ghana, which is a new presidential system, well, so we have a monocephalous executive. But who is the head of state?
The president.
The president.
And who's the head of government?
President.
Okay, good. So today he was at the University of Ghana for the congregation, for the graduation. Head of state, head of government. Right. That is to tell us that the state is different from what? Government. That is why in typical parliamentary system, you have an entity, like say the monarch, signaling or signifying the state, and then the head of government has the prime minister. Now, before the state came into being, what did we have? What kind of political organizations existed? Before the state, society was organized into some kinds of states were organized in the form of kingdoms, empires, feudal systems, city-states, tribal societies, and empires. Okay, before the states, societies were organized in these kind of arrangements. But in many of these, things were done in a more decentralized manner. Some were very ad hoc. Some were largely lawless, okay? Some were largely lawless, and it was mostly about survival of the fittest. Occasional war, brutalities, and survival of the fittest. These were how societies were organized. So you can have a vast territory. When you go to maybe the eastern part, you see a tribal society. You go to the western part, you can see a feudal arrangement where people who are rich and owning the lands, others who are landless and, yes, being at the mercy of those who have the land, and things were done in a more sometimes haphazard manner. You had a city-state arrangement, empires, and these were the various political organizations existing in a highly decentralized fashion. There was no bigger force to bind all this together. There was no overarching political authority that controlled or served as a check or watchdog on all these different arrangements. So they lacked the idea of an abstract political community that will focus on defined territory, characterized, that today's states, embody. Today, even though you might have some of these arrangements, okay, in society, there is an overarching political authority that is central. That controls all these other entities, such that they cannot operate by their whims and caprices. Even if you are a kingdom, okay, or a tribal society, and you exist within the state, that political community watches over whatever you do. So in contemporary times, the idea of abstract political community like states tend to regulate the other entities in society. That notwithstanding, most of the existing political organizations were very large. Some would start very small, but with time, they would enlarge or expand in terms of their geographical reach or size. And this was mostly done through conquest war. If they are able to conquer a particular area, they add it to their empire. So you see, it was mostly survival of the fittest. For example, the ancient Chinese Empire grew over time, increasing its territorial reach. Also, starting from here, okay, you can see, can you see the cursor here? Hello? You can see the cursor here. So, beginning from here, okay, with time, it was increasing its territory. You can see the periods here. So, you can follow suit how the ancient Chinese empire grew over time. When the idea of a formation of states, then that territory became the states. It became the Chinese states. Okay, and if I should take you to Ghana, for example, before then, when the colonialists came to the Gold Coast, they would initially meet the Fanti chiefs, okay? The bond of 1844. Okay, 6 March 1844. It was signed between who and who? Yes, it was signed between who and who?
The Fantis and
Okay. So
it was signed between Fantis and
yes, the colonialists, and then some 8 Fanti chiefs. So initially that was the Gold Coast colony, okay? Gold Coast colony, just a smaller portion. So if we would be talking about Ghana at the time, it would be that small enclave, the coastal area. But with time, the colonialists wanted to add the middle belt, that is the Ashantis, to it. Although that time, it comprised the Ashantis and then present day Bono, and then Bono East and then Bono, the likes. But the middle belt, it usually would occur through what? War, okay? Through conquest, because they wouldn't oblige to join. So through conquest, several war, till they eventually will be annexed and be made parts of the colony, which means the territory will be now enlarging. Then those in the north, the northern protectorates, they will join for protection, okay? Because they wanted to avoid invasion of their population and other kind of threats to their security. So they will join so as to receive protection from the whites, or if you like, the colonialists. So now you see that the entity Gold Coast was increasing or expanding in terms of size. So when it eventually will become what? A state, the territory has already been formed. The scope or the reach, the geographical space is already formed. And so there was no way any entity can can go back or to say that I don't want to be a part of what have you. So these are what? Empires. We are saying that before states, we had what? Empires. Empires are very large territorial area or communities. Sometimes you have different territories, even what abroad as part of your territory. That is an empire. Empires, you don't have to get the entire territory within what an area. You can have some spaces even abroad, but they are all part of your empire. Typical example is the British Empire, which had spaces scattered. Somewhere in Africa, somewhere in the Americas, okay, and then the Caribbeans. We also have for the French Empire, where they had territories also scattered. But states also have territories. You know that states have territories. We mentioned it's one of the key defining features of a state, territories. So you see, states have defined territories. Which state is this? Hello?
Greenland.
Greenland. Okay. Greenland here. Which country is this?
Russia.
And which one is
Russia.
this? Which one is this?
That's no name.
Sorry?
That's no name.
There is a name, but it's Blair.
And
There's
which one is
China.
this?
China.
Which one is this?
Australia.
And which one is this?
India.
Okay. All right. Note them very well. Now, which one is this?
Canada.
Canada.
And then beneath Canada is what?
United States.
Okay, note them very well. Now, let's look at states and other territories. So you see, these ones, well, they have well-defined territories, no dispute and what have you, so we have no problem. But sometimes there are other territories which also have their governments. They do things as if they are states, yet they don't have the recognition. And so we cannot strictly say they are our states. And they are also in the international system. They are also there. They exist. Now, my dear friends, so sometimes to avoid any political dilemma, some reputable institutions or organizations would refer to these states as what? Other territories. Because if they refer to them as states, they might be causing some political blunder. They might have, or they might meet the wrath of what? Other existing states. Because maybe some states are challenging the statehood of these territories. So if you give them the recognition, then it's like you are betraying the bigger state, or you are a traitor, and they might want to have something to do with you. So to be safer, you'll be seeing this what? Other territories when we start comparing democracies. Now, if all were neat and tidy, every parcel of land in the world will be part of one state or another. For example, if all is what? Neat and tidy, then every space on this globe will belong to, one state or the other. There wouldn't be any land left. But things are not all that smooth. There are some parcels of territory around the world which will have one or more of the qualities of a state. In fact, even meeting the Montevideo criteria. Okay, but they cannot be considered states for the purposes of analysis, because they have not been given the recognition, or they are not accepted by the community of states. So now, if I should put on my international law hat, I would say that states are those that meet the declarative theory of statehood, that is the Montevideo Convention, as well as those that meet the constitutive theory of statehood. right? Meaning they are recognized by the international system. They are recognized by the international community, and so then they exist as states. Now, example of these territories, which even though they might meet some of the Montevideo features, yet they are not states. Some examples are Taiwan, Palestine, Western Sahara, and then Hong Kong. These are states that can meet some of the key features, yet they are not regarded as such as states. Let's look at emergence of the states. How did the state emerge? The state came out from the activities or the embers of medieval Europe. So the things or the activities that occurred in the Middle Ages or medieval Europe brought forth the emergence of the states. In the Middle Ages or during the medieval era, European governance had been dominated by the transnational Roman Catholic Church and powerful feudal lords. So we are given what brought to the birth of the states, and for that matter, the modern states. During the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church was too powerful. It was very powerful. It was very powerful, controlling vast territories in Europe. Very powerful and controlling several territories in Europe. Now, there were also kingdoms. So we mentioned that societies were organized into kingdoms, empires, and what have you. Now, even though the kingdoms were existing, the kings or the monarchs were subordinate to that of the transnational RC Church. So the church was very powerful. They dictated most of the things that should be done in the various kingdoms. The church operated above the kingdoms, and the Pope was the supreme spiritual authority in Western Christendom. Now, the church's universal claims challenged the authority of kings, emperors, and local rulers. That's the point I'm making, that the church was very powerful above the kingdoms. The church had its own legal system, we call them canon laws. These were the laws they were deploying. They had their own court system. We call them the ecclesiastical courts. Ecclesiastical courts. Now, it had its own taxes called tithes and held a lot of lands across Europe. I've mentioned that the kings were also prevalent, but then they were being subject. Yes, they were they found themselves in far weaker position vis-a-vis that of the state or the church. The process of change was long, slow, and was complex. The process whereby with time, the state will be the most powerful entity, and that even if you are a church within the territory, your powers come nothing close to that of the state. Now, this process of moving from the medieval era arrangement to contemporary times, or times where the state supersedes or pretends over every other political entity within its territory. That process was long, it was slow, and very complex. It took a while or a long period for such process to evolve or come about. My dear friends, that process also did not come on a silver platter. According to Charles Tilly, the state made war. And of course, war made the state. Before the state will become powerful than every other entity, it was through war. The state came about through what? War. And war made the state. Yes, Ebenezer, during that period, the church was ruling. It was a political entity, okay, that formulated laws, and then the laws were enforced in their catchment areas. They collected taxes in the form of tithes, and they enforced their laws, the canon laws, in the ecclesiastical courts. So they were political organizations as well, controlling vast territories. And the kingdoms were subjects, if you like, subjects of the church, because they found themselves in such subordinate rules. The state came into being through war. Through war, it is through war that the state will assert its authority. It is through war that the state will release itself of every other chain or shackle, every other dominance. Every other kind of power or authority over that of the state. It is through war that the state will become more assertive. Then with time, it will become very autonomous, sovereign within its state. The state came through war, and we will be looking at this in the subsequent sessions. Now, same way as you have, for example, we have what we call the investiture controversy. This was a kind of war or controversy, confrontation between the church. Okay, that is the Pope, Pope Gregory. That is the papal, and then the Roman Emperor Henry IV. Okay, this was a kind of controversy between the church and then the kingdoms at the time. With time, as the kingdoms were asserting or winning themselves over the church, there were other kinds of confrontations against the church, which with time will shatter their domination or will reduce their dominance over the entities. Drivers of the state's dominant position. Now, how did the modern state acquire the dominant position it occupies in the modern world today? In other words, what factors drove this crucial transformation? Because we were saying that before then, the church controlled vast territories, and each of these territories would have their kingdoms and what have you. What brought about the situation where today the state is dominant, the state superintends over the church and every other political entity or social organization? This is what Charles Tilly wrote. If there was any single force that was responsible for the transition to the modern state, it was war. And Tilly argues, war made the state, and the state made war. This thing came about not on a silver platter or not by people sleeping and drinking, but then it was through war and then force, okay, trying to assert themselves. So the church lost that authority through what? Through war. The people fought for their liberation. Okay. The different entities would fight for their liberation. And also, if like Protestants would also fight the Roman Catholic Church. And so that kind of sovereignty that the Roman Catholic Church was having will decline, will reduce with time. Okay. And you see that the Peace of Westphalia will crown everything as we proceed. I first mentioned this. Let's even take Ghana, for example. Ghana as a state. You know that I mentioned that, well, the initial engagements of the colonialists with those in the colony, Gold Coast colony, okay, it was an agreement between the colonialists and then the Fanti chiefs. But in their attempt, in the further attempt to increase the territory or the reign, they had to fight off the Ashantis. Okay, there were a lot of Anglo-Ashanti wars, which will eventually lead to the conquest of the Ashanti and be added to the colony. And even with that, let me even hang that one there. For Ghana to become a state or even an independent state, you see, the colonial masters will not just make you a state. The people of Ghana had to go through a lot of confrontations with the whites eventually. For example, the 1948 riots. CPP, engaged in a lot of protests and civil disobedience, which would all be sending signal to the colonial powers to, hey, these people, they are wild, though. You have to grant them their independence, right? Otherwise, you will not have your peace. And so there were a lot of agitations, and that was the same thing that occurred in the medieval Europe. The people, so you see, the state essentially will emerge out of the people. The people will want to assert their authority. And so the true war and confrontation with time will shatter or decline the authority of the church. And then you will get to know that the key phases in the state formation will begin when gunpowder was introduced. When gunpowder was introduced in the 14th century. Before gunpowder will be introduced, the kings or the kingdoms, the kings were protected in more ad hoc manner. Yes, Charles Tilly's argument refers to the European world, but they also refer to every other part of the world, okay? Mauli. Because in several other states, for example, Ghana, even though his argument was not referring to such parts of the world, but they also follow a similar suit. Those states that were formed through decolonization. Now, for decolonization to occur, it was not just given. States had to struggle. They had to fight for their freedoms. And so, just as it was true for the medieval era, it is also true for states that were formed in the third waves and then the fourth waves, okay? So Charles Tilly's argument holds true for states that were formed in the subsequent waves of state formation. If you were a state and you were happy with their system, well, you continue to be a colony over time. But through war, confrontation, agitation, and the likes, you will be granted independent status, and then you will be a state. You'll be a state. Before you were a state, you were not a state. You were part of an empire. You were a colony where you were part of an empire, whether the British Empire or the French Empire, what have you. But once independence was given, then you attained a statehood status. Are you with me? But that statehood status did not come on silver platter through war, agitation, and then the likes, as argued by Tilly. All right. Let me see. Okay. Done. Now let's look at the key phases in state formation. Right. The key phases in state formation. And I was saying that before introduction of gunpowder, and for that matter, guns and what have you, the kingdoms were protected by knights who were seated on horseback. When you hear knights, K-N-I-G-H-T, especially those who are Catholics, you know that you have the marshals and then the knights. These guys dress like warriors. So once we hear knights, we are talking about warriors. In the medieval era, the knights would protect the kings. They were seated on horseback. They protected the kings and they were seated on horseback. And there was no organized, army or armed forces. Whenever there was an issue, then they will be calling the able men in society, and then they will rally behind the system and then fight off every aggressor. So that was how things were. But when gunpowder was introduced in 14th century, it changed military skill and tactics. Now, the kingdoms will have organized infantry. So now they'll be recruiting soldiers from amongst the population. They will organize them, maybe house them, place them under some places, barracks, train them, equip them with their guns. And then because you have organized these people, you have housed them somewhere, camped them, clearly you have to compensate or motivate or pay them at the end of a period, let's say months. And if you were going to pay them, you needed people who were going to pay, people to process the payroll. You needed people to also later audit those who are paying them. And because you'll be recruiting soldiers from among the population, you needed people who will be engaged in this, recruiting the people, those engaged in training, those paying them, those keeping their files intact, and all this. So, my dear friends, what we say is that kind of arrangement, the rulers or the kings were then obliged to employ administrators who will be recruiting, the soldiers, training them, equipping them, and then paying for the standing army. And this will lay the foundation of modern bureaucracy, the modern civil service or public service we see. This kind of arrangement in the 14th century, where gunpowder was introduced, and that all the kingdoms at the time, there was expensive arms race in Europe. Each of the kingdoms, the kings were trying to aggressively compete and get more gunpowder, and also training more soldiers and giving them these, weapons. And this arrangement where the kingdom will need a registrar who will be in charge of recruiting people, those training, equipping, and then keeping custody of all these and paying, auditing, and that will form the foundation of modern bureaucracies. Now, who knows how to play the game of chess? Have you heard of it before? The game of chess. The game of chess, C-H-E-S-S, chess.
Yes.
You know chess? Chess is a Dadabi game. It's the Dadabi game. And you see the way we play chess. Chess depicts how warfare was done in medieval Europe. And when you are playing chess, let's say you have two players, Mauli and then Desiadenyo. Now Mauli will have some players, Desiadenyo will have some players. What are some of the players that each of the contenders will have? They have special names. What are some of the players? Yes, those who know how to play chess. What are the players? Mention some.
Kings.
Yes, each of them will have a king. All right. Any other?
Queen.
Queen. Each of them will have a queen. Good. Any other?
No.
Yes.
Two rocks, then there are two shots.
Okay. Knights. I was trying. You see, I was building the point. Knights. Each of them will have a knight. What else?
The pawn.
The pawn. The pawn. The pawn. PAWN. Some people pronounce it pawn, a pawn. But it is not. It is not the bad thing you are thinking of. If you hear pawn, it's PAWN. These are soldiers. The small soldiers, are the who are at the battlefield. Okay, at the battlefield.
Yes, sir.
So initially the pounds of Mauli and then the pounds of the Seadenyo, they will engage in physical battle where they will kill themselves. So once you are able to defeat the pounds of your opponent, then you have other players that are very powerful, like the bishop, the bishop, the knights, the queen, and the likes. The kind of military tactics that these ones can display, the pounds cannot. The pounds are ordinary recruit soldiers. And before you can get to the king of your player, you need to contend with the knight. So the knight is like the final bodyguard. The final bodyguard, very powerful soldier, protecting the king. And the knights, are they 2 or 1?
The knights are 2.
The knights are 2, and the bishops are also 2. So you see, they are flanking the king, protecting the king. And the way the game of chess, is arranged depicts how warfare was done in medieval Europe. So the game of chess is like a military strategy. It depicts how. So you see the knights. And for you to know how the kings were protected before the advent of modern gunpowder, the kings were protected by their knights seated on horseback. That is why anytime you see a state function, when the president's car is coming, the car is, coming at a very slower motion. Even if it is faster, you see that the car is flanked by soldiers seated on horses. Do you see the horses always right side by side the president's car? Do you see them? So these are more or less like knights on horseback, wearing their military regalia, seated on horseback, to reflect or depict how the state would come into being, all the way from Yes, comparativists. Are you there? Hello?
Yes.
Very good. So it reflects or it depicts how the kings were protected before the advent of gunpowder. And so during solemn occasions, you will see the knights, or if you like, the soldiers seated on horseback depicting that. But the introduction of gunpowder led to an aggressive, competitive, expensive arms race. Each of the kingdoms were trying to get these weapons, and then they also would recruit soldiers having standing armies, housed in maybe barracks, and so that you know that this is your armed forces. And because of that, the rulers were compelled to employ administrators who recruit, who train, who equip, pay for their standing armies, and that will lay the foundation for modern bureaucracy. As the political units grew larger, and the growth of bureaucracy meant that local patterns of administration and justice became more uniform. So as Kingdom A was engaged in similar activity, recruiting of soldiers, equipping them, having a bureaucracy that will be paying people, that will be training, Kingdom B was engaged in Kingdom C. So political units became larger, and there was uniform pattern of administration and justice. These things became more uniform. Commerce will grow freely, and rulers will begin to establish formal diplomatic relations. And so these existing entities, right, will become states, and they will become more uniform in nature with the way they do their things, as you see in contemporary times. States appear very uniform with regards to the things they do. That is with the state formation. But let's look at the birth of the modern state, the state as you see it today. The Peace of Westphalia and the birth of the modern state. Just as war making weakened the feudal pillar and the Reformation destroyed the religious foundation. Okay, so through war, as Charles Tilly mentioned, as well as the activities of the Reformation, the Protestant or Reformation, which destroyed the religious foundation, and also weakening the feudal arrangements. The birth of the modern state is often tied to a single event, the 1648 Peace of Westphalia.
Hi, baby.
Patrick, why are you babying someone?
Patrick and 1 Samuel.
Patrick.
From 1 Samuel and Patrick.
You are toasting somebody.
So take them off.
Hey, we are toasting someone. Okay, so the birth of the modern state is often tied to a single event, which is the 1648 Peace of Westphalia. And that tells you that within the catchment areas of the church, the Roman Catholic Church, and then, if you like, across Europe, all was not well. There were a lot of antagonism, confrontation, war, and what have you. Now, the Peace of Westphalia was a series of negotiations and then, agreements that will culminate into Peace of Westphalia, which eventually will bring to an end to both the 30-year war in the Holy Roman Empire. Within the Holy Roman Empire, where the church controlled, there was 30-year war which never ended. Agitations, confrontations, and there was another 80 years of war, 80-year war between Spain and Dutch Republic. Spain was asserting some control or authority over, the territory of the Dutch, the Netherlands, and they were not getting self-determination. And so the Treaty of Westphalia brought finality to these two prolonged or protracted wars. So as the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 will be signed, or agreements reached, the 30-year war within the Holy Roman Empire will end. And the 80-year war between Spain and the Dutch Republic will also end. And that will be the beginning of the modern states. That will be the beginning of the modern states. My dear friends, And this period, or the Treaty of Westphalia, is very important in political science. In comparative politics, it's important. And then in international relations or international politics, it is also very important. What is the significance or the impact of Treaty of Westphalia, my dear friends? And I want you to note that very much. The Treaty of Westphalia will make us have the modern state as we have it today. How does the modern state behave? What are some of the features of the modern state? Between the church and then the state or government, which one is powerful? Yes.
The government.
The government, right? Which is the managing authority of the state. So the state is more powerful than every other entity within its territory. Good. So the Treaty of Westphalia or the Peace of Westphalia, sometimes you also hear what the War of Westphalia. Because before there will be peace, it suggests that there was what? War, or all was not well. So sometimes you hear the War of Westphalia, the Treaty of Westphalia, or the Peace of Westphalia. And this was the impact, or these were the implications. Now, the Peace of Westphalia made several adjustments to European state borders. So the borders, those that there were confrontations, agitations, the peace made several adjustments and brought finality that, hey, Spain, this is your territory. Maybe do not interfere with that of the Dutch or Republic, the Netherlands. Okay, so it made several adjustments, and it gave new definition to the idea of sovereignty. The Peace of Westphalia gave new definition to the notion of sovereignty. That if we say you are the government of this territory, then inshallah, there is no other power within that territory or outside that territory that can be bigger than the states. So within the territory of the state is the most powerful entity. No other social organization. You know that there are several social organizations in society. The church. The church what? Has authority, and people what? Obey. Right? The church. Or let me make it even broader. Religious what? Entities. They issue command or instructions, and then their followers what? Obey. So it is a symbol of what? Authority. Traditional authority, the king's command, give directives, and then their subjects obey. And you also have the states. Now, so we are saying that the Peace of Westphalia brought new definition to the idea of sovereignty. That within the territory, no other corridor of power can rub shoulders with that of the states, or if you like, the government, that is the managing authority of the state. Now, more importantly, the Peace of Westphalia made national secular authority superior to religious edicts from Rome. So because of the Peace of Westphalia, the national secular authority, that is what the government so constituted, was superior to every religious directive or direction from Rome, which gave rise to what is known as the Westphalian system. So the modern state you have today, where the state or its government is superior to every other entity, the secular authority is more powerful than every other corridors of power, is what we call the Westphalian system, because it emerged from the Peace or the Treaty of Westphalia. Are you with me? Hello?
Yes, Prof.
All right. So we are ending here, my dear friends. And you also get to know that even though several states predated the peace, including England, and the colonial masters, okay, these states predated the Peace of Westphalia, but the peace gave clearer definition to the powers of states. That you are too powerful does not mean you can just conquer. So the idea of conquest and domination and those things, the Peace of Westphalia brought some kind of a clearer definition to the powers of states, what you can do and what you cannot do. That within the borders of a state, you cannot, assert your authority over other territories. It brought about national self-determination. It also brought a precedent that we can end war through diplomacy. We don't have to fight to kill all your opponents before the war should end. We can end wars through diplomatic talks, through negotiation and bargaining. It also brought forth that peaceful coexistence among states must be a norm. The issue of principle of non-interference in the affairs of other sovereign states. So that is the Peace of Westphalia. There was acceptance that, you cannot interfere in the internal affairs of other sovereign states. And that is linked to this one. It gives clear definition to the powers of states. You cannot interfere in the internal affairs of other states. So, my dear friends, we are ending here with the Peace of Westphalia and the impacts. I'll pause here. If there is any question, comment, you ask, and then we will end today's session. Right? Any question for me?
Sir.
Yes.
Good evening once again. As I said earlier, it was about the assignment you gave us.
Yes.
Yes. I saw it as two different questions. So I one and sent, and I wanted to answer. I answered the second one. When I was trying to send, it didn't go. I consulted my course rep, that is Kweku, and he said that that one is about him. So I said, let me mention it to you. I mean, the work is done, but I sent one instead of me sending all the two at the same time. So that is my little challenge. I want to.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All
because
right.
the way the question was, it looked like question 1 and 2. So in my mind, if I finish one, then I'll send, then I'll do the second one. Now I finished both. I sent the first one. During the second one, I couldn't.
And the
was
system
closed.
doesn't allow you to send again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll look at the system and then reopen it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Who has
And
brought
also,
it to my attention, so I'll work it out.
Yes. Yes. Now, state and issues. So Greenland. Now, what you read about Westphalian treaty, it supposed that what was meant is not in this case, because why will one man decide that I want Greenland, I want Canada, I want this, and it looks like nobody is resisting or nobody is saying anything, or let's say because we don't have world police. So why is it exerting those energies and all those? I don't know whether to call it threat or.
Okay, yeah, I get your question. Michael wants to answer you. Michael.
No, sir. I
Yes.
wanted to ask when you are done with answering him, then I ask mine.
Sorry, Michael, we can't hear you.
I said when you are done answering his question, then I ask mine.
Okay, yours is a question. Okay, so yeah, Ebenezer, you see, yes, what you are saying is true. That one person wants to amass almost everything. But you also mentioned that no one is talking. No, some people are talking. And you see this point here. Peaceful coexistence among sovereign states as the norm, maintained by a balance of power among sovereign states. You saw how the European states, were also reorganizing themselves using some diplomacy and some other, threats and other things. That is the balance of power among sovereign states. One state can be too powerful, but then if others come together for a common agenda or mission, it is a way to match the power of a bigger force. Okay, and let's see how events go. Maybe there are some talks or other diplomatic push or pull. These have been partners all over. I mean, world over. But when there is an issue where borders on interest of other parties, so they mentioned that if it's about security, we are all part of NATO. So why the rush? And you see how they were pulling themselves up in order to avert any kind of threat by that one individual. So let's see how events would unfold. But balance of power is important. Sometimes you can have an area budo very strong. If you stand as individuals, you can conquer all of you. But once you come together and then you mount pressure, there are certain things that you can be successful, okay, in achieving. Yeah. All right.
Yes, sir, because my argument as a comparativist, I pull you in because I wanted to just oppose the same thing with the issue in the Gaza or the Palestine and also the Denmark, the Greenland.
Yeah.
Look at the way the Europeans came supporting and trying to play a diplomatic role in all,
Right.
even in the case of Ukraine as well. Now, when it comes to the Gulf region, it looks like, as a comparison, I'm trying to compare both states, or does it mean that because some people don't recognize Palestine as a state, that is why it looks like there are
One
no
is talking.
voices? Yes, sir.
Yes, it's about interest. The whole international system is about interest. Okay, that is the realist theory. The realist school of thought argues that everything is about interest. That is realpolitik. Okay, realpolitik. So if they don't have interest, well, it will appear that they are not even seeing. But where they have interest, they can use the balance of power to argue. Some also argue that, well, it is what idealist in nature, but idealism not there. And that is not very popular. Okay, this is about interest and what realpolitik. Yeah, so you are right. It's about interest. Michael.
Thank you. I want to ask, judging by the power the Roman Catholic Church had in the days gone, in today's time, by the Treaty of Westphalia and all that, the head of Roman Catholic Church now is the Vatican City.
Yes.
And Vatican City is also a state. Are they members of the United Nations?
Yes, it is a member. Okay. The Vatican City has a representation, but then it is given observer status as the UN. We call
So
it
they cannot vote.
the Holy See. Yes, Holy See. It
Okay.
represents, it has observer status. So that one with Palestine, they are the two observer, they are the two entities or states giving observer status. They can attend UN sessions, but as observers. But that recognition given to the Papa is as a result of some treaties that they have with Italy some time ago. Okay, to grant that form of autonomy to the entity. So it's an old age treaty that was signed, and also as a way of keeping some kind of tradition to recognize the role played by the church, in the medieval era. Well, that is why it is given that recognition as such. Then the treaty it had with Italy at the time. Okay, yeah. So there is no controversy about it. Okay, even though it is within the state of Italy, it is a state itself. It is one of the micro states which we'll be looking at when we are looking at the varieties of states. Okay, the Vatican City.
So do we say that the state of Vatican is a constitutive state or is a declarative state?
Declarative.
No, we would say that well, it is accepted. It's accepted, but because it is also not a full member of the UN, okay, but just observer status. It can be in between, but it is recognized. See that it is giving recognition, but when it comes to its for practical purposes, pragmatic purposes of being sovereign and then also being able to defend itself and other things, that one, Hague et al. Will not agree that it is a state. Okay, yeah, they will not agree that it is a state, and so we will leave it hanging like that. We will leave it hanging like that. It cannot be explicit.
In essence, the observer mission, being an observer mission like the Palestine and they also look like an African state that they don't have any voting right in the UN General Assembly.
No, African states have voting rights. African states have voting rights. Okay, they are part of the 19. They are part of the 193. Okay.
But sir, we are voting right. Then what has we been fighting for all these years that Mugabe them started, that they said that we need okay, that's a permanent seat.
Yes, they are talking about the Security Council, not the General Assembly. The Security Council, that is where real deals are, whether to go to war to strike. That's the Security Council. Okay, the permanent members. Okay, as for the General Assembly, I mean, last year also or this year, President Mahama was there. He even gave a speech, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, Isaac.
Thank you very much, sir. So please, my question has to do with the declarative theory of statehood and then the constitutive theory of statehood.
Yes.
And with the Montevideo, that is the 3 of the Montevideo, says that once a state or an entity, a political entity attains the 4 features, the 4 major features, that is popularity, population, government.
Who is talking? All of you keep your mics closed, okay? Isaac is on the floor. Only Isaac should have his mic on. Isaac, please speak.
Yes, and with the I need to read that as far as the Article 3 of the Montevideo declarative theory of statehood is concerned, once a country attains the 4 major features, it becomes a state. And then the constitutive theory of statehood also states that for a state to be a state, it must be a political entity. That means other states, sovereign states must recognize it as a state. Please, my question has to do with Palestine. Palestine, we all know, has its own formal ascertain the criteria or the credentials as required by the Montevideo Convention, especially Article 3. It has all those internal structures. And then on the 22nd of September 2025, I think France and then major sovereign states such as Canada, Australia, Belgium, Malta, and many other sovereign states, which is part of the UN, declared and recognized formally um, Palestine as a state. But yet still, it has not been accepted into the UN as a state. In these two conventions or treaties, the Palestine state entity has qualified for both. How is it that
I
it
can't
has
get your
still
question.
not been recognized? So please, do you get my question?
No.
I mean, yes, I get it, but then wrap it up. I mean, towards the end, so what's the question?
Yes, my
I
question
got
is
the
that
narration right, but what is the
Palestine,
question?
yeah, Palestine in those two treaties, those two treaties, that is the declarative theory and then the
No.
constitutive
You are
theory.
going back again. Yes, we got the narration. So what's the question?
I mean, why is it that what is left for it to be recognized as a state after these sovereign states have recognized
So
it
you
as a
see
state?
that statehood is what? Political. You can meet all the other things. Let me give you an example. For example, we were here one day. UCC is a school, it's a university. It has the lecturers, it has the students, it has the libraries, the facilities, everything. But we woke up one day, and then GTEC, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, said that UCC's license or accreditation has been withdrawn with immediate effect. So that very moment, the recognition, the accreditation, once it is withdrawn, then it means UCC is an illegal entity. It can have all the things. It can have all the classrooms, all the lecturers, all the students, science lab, everything. But because the recognition is withdrawn, it is not. That is what the constitutive theory. So, I mean, that one, it was just for a few days, and later they restored the accreditation. But it did not change any physical thing. It is just what recognition. So recognition is important. The constitutive theory says that for a state to be a state, it has to be recognized by the international system. And the international system is the community of states. And if you have one of the veto powers, one or two, teaming against you, then there's no consensus. Okay? There's no consensus. And so you can have diplomatic ties with even 100 different states, like Kosovo, Palestine, and the likes, as you mentioned. Yet because the UN official system, some veto powers against, you mentioned the US. And so then it is hanging. Its fate is what? Is hanging in the balance. That is the political nature of statehood. Okay. So if you say it is left with what? It is left with the formal recognition. And that one is political in nature. Nobody determines it. It is just like how we do politics in Ghana here. If you say you have all your equipment, you have the technology, you have the capital, and so you want to be recognized to go and engage in mining, the minister for lands and natural resources must what? Must agree, must give you the authorization. Otherwise, you cannot. You can have all the equipment, all the mining or the equipment, etc. But once you are not authorized by the minister for lands and natural resources, you cannot call yourself as a legal miner. You cannot. So it is political. It needs what? The recognition or acceptance of, but there's no consensus with their statehood. Okay. So yes, it is a state. It is a state by the declarative theory, but by the constitutive, No, it is not accepted by the international community, international system, because its status is challenged by one or two of the victim world powers. Okay, yeah. All right.
So, sir, sorry.
Sir,
Sir,
please, my hand is up. Uncle, please let me ask my question. Sir, please, can I ask my question now?
Yes.
Oh, we are in a queue.
My hand
Is it
is
a
up. So
follow-up question or a different one?
No, this is Felix. No, I'm not the one who asked the earlier question.
Ah,
My
then
hand
it's
is
a
up
queue.
anyway.
Yes.
Wait, who is
So,
next?
Mauli.
Okay, yeah, Eric.
Yeah. So, sir, African states were created by colonial powers, not by their own history of war like Europe. So, does this Westphalian idea of sovereignty fit these states, or does it just cover artificial borders
Yes.
that they have?
So the modern state was born in Europe, and you know that the modern state is the one where there's a sovereignty. Sovereignty resides in the state and its government. And we mentioned that the modern state was born in Europe, and then its form was exported. Okay, its form with the sovereignty residing with the state and its government was exported to the other parts of the world, such as South Africa. So when we, attained our statehood through independence, okay, we follow suit with the notion of the modern statehood, right? So it was easier. We did not have to reinvent anything. The state had been born in Europe, and its form was exported to the other parts of the world, okay, as it was. Right. Are you fine?
Okay, sir, please.
Yes,
sir. Please, any recommended test on this whole lecture?
Okay, well, that's fine. So but your main text is Hague et al. Okay, Hague et al. And then Karamani. So I'll search for the soft copies. Well, it's difficult getting the soft copy, but the hard copy, I've returned it to the University of Manchester Library where I brought it from. But I've made request.
I can get the soft copy. So if I get a name, I can get.
Oh, so you text me, and then I'll send you the title. But the scholars are Haig, Harrop, and McCormick. Okay. Introduction to Comparative Politics. Haig, Harrop, and McCormick, 2016. Introduction to Comparative Politics. Or Daniel Karamani. Karamani, Caramani. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel Karamani. Introduction to Comparative Politics. Okay. And if you are able to get the PDFs, that would be fantastic, because so get in touch with Moses, okay? Moses has my number. He will give it to you, and then we can take it from there, okay? Right, Eric? Try and get it.
Thank you.
Good. Fantastic. Michael.
Prof, I wanted to find out if a state has met all the declarative theory requirements and applied to the community of nations to be recognized, but probably turned down. Will it have any impact on that state in terms of trade or alliances with other nations that are members of the community of nations already?
No, it will not. Even those that are not recognized, they still trade with other states. They still have relations with other states. Okay. Yeah, Kosovo has partnership with over 90 different states, even though it is still a de facto state. Okay. So you see, maybe hold on with these questions. When we are done with classifying states based on political authority, this same thing will come again. You will get to know that we have states that we call de facto states. All those that are formed through the declarative theory, we call them de facto states. They are states. They exist. They trade with some other states. They have some partnership with other states. Okay, they have their currency, they do everything, but they are not giving that, official recognition by the international system. Yet they have bilateral relations with other states. They even have some multilateral relations, but that official recognition is not there. Okay, yeah, so they are there. We call them de facto states. That they are not recognized by the international system, that's not really what matter most. It's just like Kofi and Amma, Kofi and Yao, and they are staying. If you say you are not allowing them to marry, they are there. Every day they are, they are doing what you make. They are doing whatever they want to do. They are giving birth. They sew their cloth, the same materials, and Charlie, they are roaming in town. Oh, na oble. Or someone na mobile. They are doing their own thing. They move about and they are enjoying their lives as couple. Nothing, hampers them. When they are going for programs, they introduce them as couples and what have you. But then that kind of official conferment, well, that one is there. But then they are enjoying their lives, giving birth to their kids who have even grown, attending. They go to church with them, So you can call them a de facto, couples, but they are there. De facto couple or de facto states. These days they exist. They exist. They do whatever. They can export, they import from other states, they have relations with other. Okay, that is why when we ask you how many states do we have, my dear friends, do not be quick to produce an answer. You have to narrate all this, and I like the way you are using the theories, the declarative, the constitutive, and by the time we are done with this lecture proper, which will be next week, you will be adding things like, de facto states, micro states, and what have you, so that you have a rich description of how many states do we have, my dear friends. Felix.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so please, I have two questions.
Yes.
My question, what I think is what Eric has asked, and you have added more. That is about 193 states that we have. And I know that Africa, for example, we have about 53 or 54 countries. So I wanted to know, does it worldwide we have only 193 states that is fully recognized? And if so, how many countries do we, or how many states do we have throughout the world? That's my first one. The second one I wanted to ask is that, first, I am a Catholic kid anyway, and a knight for that matter. So I wanted to know, looking at history, the position of the Catholic Church about the Roman Empire war that emanated some time ago. And also, I also heard somebody quoting paper bull that was a decree ordered by a pope some time ago. So looking at history, can we say that the Roman Church at that time was wrong, or it contributed for us to have the modern state that we have?
So thank you, Felix. Are you done with the questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the question that I'm going to ask you, you are also asking me. So I'm not going to answer that question. It is a question that will answer itself by the end of the full lecture, okay? Because it is a whole WhatsApp topic. Therefore, how many states do we have? Okay, and I told you that I've even given it to the main campus as their IE. Okay, but to answer such a question, how many states do we have in the world? I told you that there is no simple answer. are you referring to those formed by declarative theory, inclusive, or just those by the constitutive theory? And you mentioned that, yes, there are 54 states in Africa. Yes, fantastic. And these are members of the UN, okay? They are members of the UN. And the UN has what? Membership 193, which means that Africa forms at least some 28% of the membership, okay? And even in Africa, apart from the 54, there are some also, of course, Somalia. If you go to Somalia, there is a state within Somalia, Somaliland, okay? And so Somaliland is a state, but it is formed by the declarative or theory of statehood. So you will not add it to the 54. So it is there, whether it is a state or not, your description of, because if you go there today, it is more effective than or even Somalia, okay? The way it's able to govern is more effective in terms of governance than Somalia, yet it is not added to the membership. So if you are to put all, including the declarative theory, you have over 200 states, okay? You can have over 200. Some textbooks will quote like 205. That is when you are adding all those with declarative theories, or we call it de facto states, okay? The 193 that you see, Taiwan is not part. Taiwan is not part. Kosovo is not part. Yet these entities exist. They exist, but they are not politically recognized by the international system. So when it comes to many data sets like the democracy index, our next topic will be democracy. So when we are comparing democracy, you see that when they are collecting data for states in the world, they collect data for, for states formed through the constitutive theories and states formed through the declarative theory. But you know how they put it? For example, the democracy index, the EIU, we say that, well, we sampled 167 independent states and 2 territories. And I always ask the students, what doing by what 2 territories? The Freedom House will say, well, we sampled 195 for the independent states and then 13 territories. You see, I mentioned that statehood is sometimes political. So then these are reputable international organizations. They do not want to meddle into this political arena. Okay? For example, if President Mahama or the government will say that, well, this entity is not recognized as this, and you are a company in Ghana, you want to play it safe. If they say this is not recognized, you have to regard it as such. You don't have to also recognize it, because otherwise you will have the state to contend with. So these reputable organizations, well, they will say that, well, we sampled 195 for states and 13 territories. But as a student of comparative politics, you are aware that the 13 territories are also states, but they are states formed through the declarative theory. They are de facto states, okay? And that will even give you an idea about number of states what we have in the world, okay? All right, any question? Any other question, my dear friends?
But sir, what about my question about the second question about the Roman Catholic Church?
What about it?
Oh, I said that if you look at history, can we say that the position of the church or the Pope at that time that caused the war, can we say it is wrong approach,
Tell us the
or it
history.
contributed to the?
What was the history?
Well, we know. I think I saw that on the slide that Pope Gregory versus I mean, what considered a war at that time?
The investiture war.
Yes, please.
Uh-huh.
And I'm asking if we can say that it was a wrong approach, or it contributed to the modern state that we have.
No, it did not contribute to so this was an emperor trying to assert his authority, okay, above any other external. So that kind of a controversy, who is supposed to um who is supposed to constitute the bishop or to have what control of the bishop, that is what to bring to the modern idea of a secular authority being superior to any other edict from Rome. Okay, and that is the idea of modern sovereignty, that within the territory, no other force can rub shoulders with that of the state. So, I mean, these events in the past will all add up, culminate into the Treaty of Westphalia, so that we make things clear that within the territory, no other power, no other force, okay, can be above that of the states. If you want something, maybe you can what, negotiate and bargain and maybe lobby through diplomacy. But clearly, it is the national secular authority that is sovereign within its territory. No other edicts from Rome can superimpose on that of the state. Okay, yeah. So, well, maybe lessons from those investiture controversies and other kinds of confrontation between the powers of the papal and then, the monarchs or the emperors, okay, which will all serve as lessons, so that in the Treaty of Westphalia, all this will be brought to the table, and then the parties will sign that, okay, henceforth, this is the way to go. And then there will be peace, okay, which guided how the modern state operates. Yeah. Felix.
Yes, sir.
Are you fine?
Thank you so much.
All right.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, my dear friends. So thank you very much, class, for your contribution and then your patience. Today we have gone past our normal time. Some have left already.
Prof.
Yes. Yes, Kendrick.
Hello, Prof.
Yes. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, my dear friends. Let's meet next week. Okay.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, please talk. Fortunate. Kendrick.